everything has become a pattern. I think there is a lot of sameness. A lot of people, young people, think that this is the 100% solution to all your problems. Just feed the AI and it'll give you answers. Life is sorted. I'm not just arrogant, I'm also actually ignorant. I actually don't understand the business at all. You are in charge of the message first, and then you figure out what the medium should be. But there is, I think, over-reliance on the medium these days. A lot of creative people are not being creative at all.
Welcome to Refuel. This entire series we are producing for young people in marketing and especially in video related, teams and freelancers.
Thank you so much.
I want to start this off by reading a few lines that you have put out publicly over the last few years.
My God.
And
I didn't know this was a trial.
you said that you want to make advertising fun again. What do you mean by putting fun into advertising today?
Well, I come from a time when we were always pushed to, come up with good ideas. And that entire quest for that nice idea, fun idea, used to make the environment also a little fun. See, the profession is very stressful. It can be unforgiving. So somewhere having a laugh about it, having fun through the process is what I mean. So now that I'm doing my own thing, I want to create that same environment where people are having fun. Everybody's going to stress out anyway. We're all going to work hard. All that is fine. But as long as we have a laugh about it, it starts affecting our work as well. It starts making our work better. That's what I mean by, bringing back the fun in advertising.
You have also said, why learn from your mistakes when you can learn from mine? If we restrict this to video ads or brand films, what are two mistakes you made early that still matter today?
Okay. Well, I've made many mistakes. In fact, I'll start with right when I started my career, right? So, in the beginning of my career, like I think most people, my assumption was here I am the next David Ogilvy, okay, and the next Bill Bernbach, and I've come to change the world. And so I had that arrogance. I was hopefully not extremely difficult to work with, but I had this arrogance, right? Because I thought that, clients are rejecting my ideas. Forget clients. Even my seniors are rejecting my ideas because, they don't get it. They don't understand what real creativity is. I am the one who's going to do it, right? And I soon realized, thankfully, because of some brilliant colleagues and some great seniors, that I'm not just arrogant, I'm also actually ignorant. I actually don't understand the business at all, right? What we have to understand, and what our seniors also taught us at that time, was that yes, advertising is art, right? It's lovely. You're creating things out of thin air, right? That's what you're doing. Someone gives you a brief, you're trying to come up with an idea, write something, write a film, maybe a radio spot. So it is art, but it is not fine art. You're not doing this for yourself. This is commercial art. There's a business reason, attached to it. Why you're doing this? Someone is paying for it. So as long as you pay enough attention to what the brand is trying to do, what the brand is all about, who are you talking to, who are the people out there, if you start paying attention to that, your ideas become sharper, they land better, they are more effective. And that's something that I learned a slightly earlier in my career, and I wish everybody learns that right at the beginning, right? So when I learned that, I realized that okay, I am actually being arrogant and I'm being ignorant. I need to know the business better to do better in my career. So when I started doing that, things started changing, right? Because otherwise, initially you feel that you are here to do some really exciting things, but nobody seems to be on board with you, right? But then you start understanding that this is important. Understanding the brand, understanding people, all of that is important. How that translates into work is that, for example, I started as a pure copywriter, right? I was fortunate to actually work on multiple brands with some really great people at some very interesting agencies. And I have done probably every format of advertising by now in my 25, 26 years, where I've done short copy, long copy, released out there, and things like that. And all of these have different learnings and different ways of approaching. But what I started understanding right at the beginning was that as a copywriter, for example, you want to write your language. If it's English, for me, it was English. You try to use heavy words, right? Because you want to show off that, hey, you know what, I'm so good at writing. But then you start understanding that no, you have to write the way people talk or people will understand. And it also has to depend on the kind of brand you're working on. So those kind of learnings come in, that it's not just your skill. For your skill to get better, you have to have more understanding of the industry. So one learning I would say was that in a way, the way I like to say it is, the more you know, the more you grow, right? The more you know about the industry, how things work, that starts helping you even more.
Can you briefly walk us through your journey from a copywriter to a creative director, then working independently, and now being a founder of Fun Intended?
I started in 1999. 1999, okay, not 1899. But yeah, I'm that old. It was interesting. I mean, it was by mistake that I almost ended up in advertising. I was the poster boy of my college, okay, and I'm not talking about looks. I used to make posters in college, and for some other event, I would do a poster, and then once I'd done a series of posters for one college event, and these two ex-students who were working at Coca-Cola at that time, they happened to visit, and they were looking at all this stuff, and they sought me out saying, "Arey, you wrote these lines." I said, "Yeah." They say, "You should become a copywriter." That was the first time I discovered that there's a profession called copywriting. My father was awesome. He went out and did all his research that what is copywriting, how can one get into it. And I found one course by the Triple A's of I, the Advertising Agencies Association of India. They had this little course, and it was wonderful, 2 months. And literally before my college results were out, I was in my first job. So I started at this oldest agency ever called Dattaram Advertising in Bombay, and it's no more, unfortunately. Even the family running it, the next generation has decided not to go with it. But nice little agency. That's where I started. I did that. Then I did a year at FCB, um, and then suddenly I saw an opportunity to go to Sri Lanka out of the blue, right? I just saw that there used to be a magazine called Campaign Brief, right? And I just saw this vacancy, applied for it, it worked out, and I went to work at DDB Sri Lanka. 4 years, great fun. And then I came back to Bombay, and I worked at DDB Mudra a couple of times again. So I spent a total of 21 plus years in a variety of agencies. I was very lucky to work with multiple great legendary people, and starting with Mohammad Khan, actually learned how to write copy from him. Then I worked with Sonal Dabral, I worked with Bobby Pawar, Preeti Nair, Prasoon Joshi. So many people I worked with. Recently I worked with Ashish Kharwatkar. And I've been lucky that I got to work on a variety of brands, do a variety of things, and including print, long copy, films, radio spots, outdoor, recently social media as well. And then about 5 years ago, I went independent. That's just a nice way of saying freelancer, but yeah. So I started freelancing, and about a few years of that, I said, I've now made another network of people who I love working with, all of them freelancers. So then I started this little collective which I call Fun Intended Advertising and Stuff Writer. So pun intended had to show up somewhere. So it's called Fun Intended. And last couple of years, we've been working on a few interesting brands. So that's been my journey.
One of the things that we would like to do is for you to break down one or two of your video advertisements or campaigns. We want to understand how it maybe started from you getting a brief from the client, how that brief developed with you, how you found a central idea for it, and then how did you translate all of that into a brief for a video team, and how did that entire execution take place?
If I have to look at this, like I said, I was a creative director at DDB at that time. I was part of a team, right? But this is how the agency life sort of trains you. When I saw all these departments and how they work, today, just couple of years back when I was working on ICC. ICC was launching an app called Super Team. It's live right now. You should go and check it out. Uh, that's when all of this, learning came into help me, because I went and met them. They told me, hey, this is an app, and this is where you can actually own the different cricketing moments, right, that you see out there, the moments that take place in a match. The first thing I told the client was that I don't like cricket. I don't watch cricket, right? But I'm not a fan, but I'm a copywriter, right? I'm a creative person. So I will, science the hell out of this. I will go through all sorts of things to understand this game. I did not like cricket for some personal reasons, because as a kid, Sunday was the only time when we could watch something on TV. And a lot of times on Sundays, I used to come excited to watch my He-Man or something like that. And my dad would be sitting there watching a one-day international. So that somewhere, made me dislike the game. But when I sat down and I studied the cricketers that we were going to shoot with, the advertising that is done for cricket, all the different brands that do this advertising, understanding why people are crazy about cricket, understanding that there's actually science, there's actually maths, there's actually physics that is involved in how cricket is played. That sort of got me interested, and to this day I look forward to watching all sorts of matches, even if it's not an India team match. I do watch it. Now that's what advertising does to you actually. So I studied the brand. Now here, the example I'm giving here is important, because this I did as an independent and individual, right, person, just me. So I was then again looking at strategy. What should be my strategy? For that, I went through, like I said, all sorts of ads and videos to understand what the subject is, come up with a direction. And even the direction that I came up with, I told the client that, because I'm not a cricket fan or so involved in cricket, I am actually likely to have a very different take on how this advertising should be. Because what I keep seeing is Tashan, Jashan, passion. I keep seeing that. And though it's not untrue, I think it's a little done. So can we try and take a slightly different approach? I read up about all the cricketers and their own personal things, and looked at their social media, and that was what helped me come up with small incidents. Like for example, Hardik Pandya's no look shot, right? Can I use the no look shot in a very different way, right? Or Bumrah, the way he's accurate with his bowling, right? Can I use it slightly differently and not just get them into a studio and make them bowl or bat and just do the same thing, right? So this is where again, like I said, initially I was part of an ecosystem, a larger ecosystem, an agency, and I've seen different departments at play, and that's how usually things pan out in an ideal world. And even when I worked as an individual, all those learnings helped me build my campaign. So till this day, yeah, I mean, whatever comes to me, any work that comes to me, that ends up being my approach, right? So yeah, that's what I can tell you about campaigns.
What would you say to a young person looking at the world of advertising in the age of AI?
I have spent 25 plus years in the business. I have cut my teeth on actual effort in understanding how copywriting works or writing works or ideas work, right? I've what do you say, spent blood, sweat, everything in doing all this. So when I think of AI, I think it's brilliant. Okay. People assume that because I'm in that sense old school copywriter, etc., I would be naturally against AI. My thing is, I think AI is awesome. AI is wonderful, but the way it is used is not the right thing to do. That's what I think. What I mean by that is that what we have to understand is, if you are a creative person, what is creativity? It's about creating something new, right? So when you look at AI, what AI is actually doing is, it's not creating something new. It is actually going through patterns. It has access to tons of data, right? The kind of data that we won't have access to, or we won't be able to call upon in mere seconds, right? So that's the amazing thing about AI, that it has access to all that data, and it can actually make sense of all that data. The simple difference between knowledge and intelligence, right? You might have a lot of knowledge, lot of data, but can you make sense of it? When you make sense of it, that's intelligence, right? So AI does that brilliantly. But what we have to understand is that there is no human factor beyond that in AI. It is looking at existing data It is looking at patterns and telling you those patterns. If you take that as a foundation to make your foundational work easy, that's brilliant. For example, when I worked in agencies, AI had not taken off so much, but I know of agencies which purely entirely depend on AI sometimes. I don't want to name anyone, but I've seen people who've had that little training before in agencies, they use AI very differently. While a lot of people, young people, think that this is the 100% solution to all your problems, right? Just feed the AI and it'll give you answers, life is sorted. That's not what you are, right?
One of the most fun questions of this entire thing. We want to know your most controversial opinion about advertising today.
I wouldn't say it's controversial really, but I think it's something that the industry needs to actually think about. And when I say industry, I mean not just agencies and creative people, but even brands need to think about. Is that it feels like we are reinventing the wheel, right? Because what I keep seeing is that, like I said earlier, we were taught a simple thing that you are in charge of the message first, and then you figure out what the medium should be, right? So you should be in control, and then eventually they go in tandem, right? But there is, I think, over reliance on the medium these days. The medium dictates everything, and to such a blinding extent that brands are okay to just relegate all control. That I find very strange, and because of that, I think there is a lot of sameness, a lot of sameness. Everything has become a pattern. Anything that you see today as a trend, you know that there are going to be 15 versions of the same videos. Whether they are, branded content or even someone's personal content, there is going to be, copies of the same thing, which I find very strange. Because I come from a generation and I would like to know that there are enough people, even in today's generations, who hold that one little flag of, idea. My idea needs to be different. So my controversial take would be that a lot of creative people are not being creative at all. Anyone who calls themselves a creative agency or creative professional or a creative brand, maybe you're not creative. Because what is the actual definition of creative or creativity, right? Is to create something new, create something different.
When you have a campaign that you're working on, uh, that might be, a video campaign where you need to either make a single advertisement or you need to make digital content, and now you're shopping for a video production agency, or you're shopping for singular artists to form a team. When you're looking at different profiles, or like when you meet people in person, what are some of the green flags and red flags for you in terms of working with them?
Well, the green flags, like the way uh, creative people usually look at a show reel, for example. One thing is to have a show reel. That helps. The show reel, I believe, doesn't have to have 15, 20, 50 ads or videos, right? It needs to have enough pieces. And this goes for creative portfolios as well, right? 5, 6 pieces which tell me what that person brings to the table, not the technology that they are able to achieve, not the kind of brands they have worked on, not the kind of challenges. No. If you are showing me a show reel and you're telling me, hey, you know what, I did an ad for this big time biscuit brand. Okay, so great, good for you. Hope you made some amount of profit out of it. But that creative piece, are you proud of it? Have you tried something different as a director or even a producer, right? That is something I would look at. Because what ends up happening is what creative people actually need, okay, the industry actually needs, are directors who take that script that you've given them and probably take it in a better direction entirely. Earlier, that was the case. And let me be very honest, it is also a factor of money, because you had the budgets to do that, to try something different, and that challenge still remains. And it's honestly going to be worse for a while. But the point is, a creative person or an agency looks at work and actually looks at, even if this person had a very small budget, even if they had a unknown brand, even if they had, like, first time actors, were they able to get say, acting done if it required acting? Were they able to edit it nicely? Were they able to do something in those constraints? That's what people would. It's not about the glitz and glamour. Like I've seen a lot of showreels by now. I've never been impressed by. I mean, of course, I've been impressed by something done at a huge scale. But what impresses you actually is how they were able to get an actor to act, right? How they were able to piece that together. So if your work at least shows that, then that makes it easier to hire you. That's my take. The red flag I've seen is when the green flag, again from a production point of view. For me, a green flag is when a producer says this cannot be done in this budget. That for me is a green flag. That is a producer or a production house owner who understands what can be done, what cannot be done. If a producer says, "Arey sir, ho jayega sir, aap batao na." No, that person is just trying to get the job, and chances are they might cut corners later. So somewhere for me that is a green flag, red flag. That's all.
Thanks for being on Refuel, Ashish. And
Thank you so much.
we hope to speak with you again. We have
Yes,
a lot
absolutely.
more that
Anytime. Yeah, hopefully in an AC environment somewhere.